I sat alone in the quiet of my living room, the funeral flowers already beginning to wilt. The house felt unfamiliar, like a museum to a life I no longer recognized. My husband was gone, and with him, the last trace of routine and meaning. People had come, cried, and left. I stayed behind with silence for company. My son had gone back to college 2 days after the funeral. He said he needed the distraction. I understood, or at least pretended to. The truth was, we hadn't been happy for years. My husband and I shared space, shared history, but the warmth had faded. The last time he'd touched me with affection had been on our anniversary 3 years ago. We stopped laughing at the same things. He buried himself in work, and I buried myself in making the house function. When he got sick, I cared for him with duty, not passion. I loved him, yes, but it was the love of commitment, not craving. That part of me, the woman, not the wife or mother, had been dormant so long I didn't know if she still existed. I hadn't cried since the day of the funeral. I sat there waiting for grief to hit me like a wave, but it never did. It lingered like fog. I stared at the photos on the mantel. Our wedding, our son's first steps, the 3 of us smiling in static time. I felt detached from it all, like I was looking at someone else's life. Then the knock came. I hesitated. Maybe it was a delivery. Maybe someone forgot their umbrella. I opened the door and froze. Evan stood there, my son's best friend since middle school. He looked different, older, grounded. In his hands was a simple bouquet of daisies. I just heard. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. I stepped aside, motioning him in without words. He placed the flowers on the table and hugged me gently. I felt how firm his arms had become, how natural his presence was in this house. He'd spent countless afternoons here growing up, eating snacks, playing video games with my son, helping me carry groceries. I hadn't seen him in over a year, maybe more. Now here he was, a man standing where a boy used to be. "I wanted to make sure you were okay," he said. His voice had a calm weight to it, something soothing I didn't know I needed. He nodded. "I'm managing." He didn't push. He just sat with me, listened. He told me how sorry he was, how much he respected my husband. But what I noticed most was the way he looked at me, like I mattered. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something stir. It wasn't relief or happiness. It was something far more dangerous. Oh. Evan came by again 2 days later, this time with groceries and a quiet insistence that I shouldn't be alone. I let him in without protest. He moved with an ease that reminded me of old times, but something between us had changed. There was a new tension, subtle but unmistakable, like electricity before a storm. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. We sat down with coffee, and the conversation drifted to safer topics at first. School, work, how fast time was moving. But the space between our words started to fill with silence that didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, full of the things we weren't saying. He looked at me for a long time before speaking again. "I always admired you, not just as my friend's mom. As a person." I didn't respond right away. My fingers curled tighter around the cup. I had no script for this. No roadmap for where we were heading. I should have shut it down. But instead I asked why. "Because you've always carried everyone," he said. "Even now, you're still taking care of everything and pretending like you're not breaking." It hit me harder than I expected. No one had acknowledged me like that in years. Not as someone with needs or fragility. Just as a woman surviving in silence. My husband had stopped asking me how I felt long before he got sick. Even my son, well-meaning as he was, had no idea who I was outside the role I played for him. Evan's eyes stayed on mine. There was no judgment in them, just concern. And maybe something else. Something bolder. "You deserve someone who sees you," he said quietly. That sentence didn't sound like comfort. Sounded like confession. I exhaled slowly, setting the cup down. My heartbeat ticked louder in my ears. "Evan, this can't happen." "I know," he said. "I'm not trying to make anything happen. I wanted you to know. You're not invisible." There it was, direct and disarming. Not a flirtation, not a ploy. A raw truth laid at my feet. And somehow that made it harder to walk away. He stayed longer than he probably should have. We didn't touch. But our words did. We shared things we had no right sharing. I told him about the nights I cried quietly in the bathroom so no one would hear. About how I used to dream of escaping just for a weekend, to remember what it felt like to want something for myself. He listened like every word mattered. When he finally left, he looked at me like he was memorizing the moment. I stood at the door long after it closed, asking myself if I'd just imagined everything. But deep down I knew better. Something had shifted. Irrevocably. I told myself it would stop there. That whatever passed between us was fleeting, born out of grief and loneliness. But I couldn't forget the way he looked at me. Not like I was broken. Not like I was someone's widow. But like I was still whole, still desirable, still real. Days passed with his absence louder than the silence I'd grown used to. When he texted asking if I needed help moving some boxes from the attic, I didn't hesitate. Said yes. He arrived early. We didn't talk much at first. It was awkward in a way that felt too aware, like we were both pretending this was about boxes. Halfway through I stopped pretending. I looked at him. Why are you really here? He didn't blink. Because I can't stop thinking about you. I didn't ask what he meant. Already knew. He stepped closer, slow, like he was giving me time to stop it. I didn't move. I wanted to say no. I wanted to stay loyal to the image of a woman who still followed rules, who still played her part. But I was tired. Of being respectable. Of being untouched. Of being nothing but memories keeper. When he kissed me, I let him. There was no calculation, no seduction. Just hunger. Something that had been buried for so long I'd forgotten the taste of it. He touched me like I was something precious, not fragile. And I responded like a woman reclaiming her name. Every part of me that had gone silent came back screaming. I didn't think about the age difference. I didn't think about the fact that he'd grown up in my house. I didn't think about what my son would say, or what my husband might think if he could see me now. All I thought about was the way Evan made me feel, seen, wanted, alive. Afterward, I sat with the guilt like it was a second skin. I expected shame to come crashing down, but it didn't. What came was clarity. This wasn't about betrayal. Not really. It was about survival. About choosing myself for once. About taking a moment that made me feel like more than a caretaker, more than a shadow. Evan didn't speak right away. He just held me, his breath steady against mine. "Do you regret it?" he asked softly. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't ready to admit that I didn't. I stood, got dressed, and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked the same, but everything inside me had shifted. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. There would be consequences. I wasn't naive. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel numb. I felt like I was breathing. And I wasn't ready to let that go. The next morning, I woke before the sun, wrapped in sheets that still smelled like him. The weight of what I had done didn't crash into me. It seeped in slow, creeping into my thoughts like a shadow. I dressed quietly, my mind already running ahead. My son had called late last night, said he'd be driving home for the weekend. He wanted to check on me. I told him I'd be here. Always was. I avoided mirrors. I didn't want to see what guilt looked like on my face. I didn't regret the night. Not in the way people expect. What I regretted was how complicated everything had become. Evan hadn't tried to convince me of anything afterward. He had just held me, kissed my forehead, and told me I didn't owe him answers. That made it harder. He texted around noon. Just 3 words. "Are you okay?" I didn't respond. My son arrived later in the afternoon, full of concern and casual questions. Smiled. Delight. I told him I was taking things day by day, that I was fine. I cooked dinner while he talked about his classes, his friends, his future. Evan's name didn't come up, but I felt it hanging in the air like a secret too big to ignore. Later that night, after my son had gone to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. I stared at my phone, read Evan's message again and typed, I don't know. Then deleted it. I typed, "This can't happen again." Deleted that too. Finally sent nothing. The weight of the silence between us grew heavier each day. He didn't reach out again. And I didn't chase it. We both understood something had to break. Either the connection or the life I'd built around not needing one. One morning, I found myself walking into my husband's study. Everything was still there. The books, the photographs, the reminders. I picked up one of our old wedding pictures. We looked so young. So convinced love would be enough to carry us. But time wore things down. I had kept our vows, even when the marriage stopped feeding me. I had been loyal, present, careful. But I had not been whole. Put the photo face down. I wasn't the woman I had been at the funeral. I wasn't even the one who stood at that door when Evan first knocked. Something had broken open inside me, and I couldn't force it closed just to make everyone else comfortable. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I'd see Evan again. But I knew I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. I had felt something real. Maybe that was enough. Maybe not. But I wasn't sorry for wanting more. I wasn't sorry for remembering what it felt like to be desired, chosen, and seen. And no matter what came next, I knew this. I would never disappear into silence again.